up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot of volleyball to discuss. And I need a lot. First and foremost, it's NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament time. 64 teams entered, but only one shall be crowned national champion. And only one team remains undefeated through the regular season, and that's Nebraska. 30-0, they ran through the Big Ten, pretty much unscathed. Now can Big Red bring it home? Also, we have some NCAA men's volleyball news. Pacific, yep, the Pacific Tigers, they're back, they're better, and they are reinstated. Then they'll be back in 2027 in the NCAA men's volleyball world. Also, Alan Knight announces that he will be retiring at the end of the calendar year. Why did this happen, and who are possible replacements for him? Also, we have to go to the MLB draft from last week, as we had a lot of players in the NCAA women's volleyball realm get drafted. But who went number one overall? Plenty of volleyball, step next. Something about the volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday, wherever you are listening from. Either way, you've made your way in episode 327 of Set Point. Without any further delay, let's begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without iSports Radio providing the platform to go live on YouTube, Twitch, and on X as well. Please do follow iSports Radio on several different social media platforms such as X and TikTok. Also, in addition, we have once again brought back our Instagram. So definitely do follow on Instagram as well at iSports Radio. We would definitely appreciate it. Also, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. We would also greatly appreciate that as well. We're trying to reach 500 subscribers. We're trying to be a household name without being a big market company. And with your help, we could definitely make it to the top. So please do subscribe to iSports Radio. We would greatly appreciate it. For the last 11 years, iSports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making iSports Radio your direct feed for all of that sports. A huge shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky, Premium Biscuit Beef Jerky, and Vital Apparel. So without any further delay, let's get on into what our sponsors are all about. I will see you all in a bit.
Hi, eSports Radio fans. This show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clinking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go. For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
That's right, everybody. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows as well as our amazing sponsors, our two amazing sponsors. And also, once again, follow us on social media as well, X, TikTok, Instagram as well, and subscribe to us on YouTube. We would greatly appreciate it. You can also follow Setpoint on social media on X and TikTok at set_point.ie. You could also follow me personally on X as well at Teran Rodriguez 1. You could also follow Setpoint on social media on Instagram as well at set_point.iesr, where I've been posting a majority of my content. I've been trying to get all my content on TikTok as well. I keep forgetting to post it on TikTok. I swear I'm going to remember. Anyway, with that being said, let's get on into the volleyball action. So we got some volleyball to recap. We're going to quickly go through most of the week 14 just because I don't want to get too hung up on it, just because we got a lot of volleyball to discuss, not just from NCAA women's volleyball, but the NCAA tournament. And then we've got NCAA men's volleyball, and then we've got the MLV, and then I'll send you all on your way. So last week was the SEC tournament semifinals where Kentucky took down Tennessee and then Texas took down Texas A&M. Both matches were decided in 4. But on Tuesday was the SEC championship match between Texas and Kentucky. And in the end, Kentucky wound up reverse sweeping Texas. That was a massive comeback win for the ages when it comes to Big Blue. Absolutely amazing. And I think they dodged a match point, if I'm not mistaken, in set number 3. And like most sets 2, 3, and 4 were pretty tight for the most part. Set 1, Texas dominated, and then set 5 was pretty much all Kentucky in the second half, as the Wildcats were led by Eva Hudson, who had 25 kills. Lizzie Carr and Brooklyn DeLay both had 13 kills. Asia Thigpen added 10 kills. As a team, Kentucky hit 227, which is pretty nice if you ask me. They had 11 blocks, 69 digs, 5 service aces. This team was on a heater. And the crazy part is that Texas hit 301, but they only had 1 service ace. They had 78 digs, which was pretty nice. They also had 8.5 blocks, as they were led by Tori Stafford, who had 28 kills. Abby Vanderwall and Kari Spears both had 15 kills. It just felt like that Texas wasn't the same after set 3. Though they did make a little bit of a late surge. They got to within 1 at 21-20, but Kentucky was able to close off the set on a on a little bit of a late run to take that fourth set. And like I said, fifth set was pretty much all Kentucky, especially in the second half. So overall, it was a great win for Kentucky. They beat Texas twice in one season. And the fact that they were able to do so in the SEC championship was absolutely amazing. Speaking of amazing matches, we actually had number 4 Pitt take down number 7 Louisville in straight sets, which was also impressive. Although Louisville did make the match close, all 3 sets were close, Pitt was able to sweep the Cardinals away as they kind of got their lick. I think they didn't. I know Pitt played Stanford, but I don't know if they played Louisville twice. But anyway, Olivia Babcock led the way with 22 kills. She had over half of Pitt's kills by 1. And then the next kill leader for Pitt was Brooke Mosier, who had 5 kills, as well as Blair Bayless. Pitt hit 228, which wasn't bad. They had 7 aces, 3 of which went to Haiti Tautua. And then Babcock had 2 aces of her own. She also had 8 digs and 5 blocks as well. For Louisville, they only hit 173. They had 52 digs, which wasn't terrible, 1 above Pitt, but they were led by Peyton Pearson, who had 13 kills. Chloe Chicoine had 12 kills. Cara Cressy had 10 kills. So this loss pretty much axed the chances of Louisville getting into York winning the ACC championship. It didn't axe their hopes of making the NCAA tournament because they were a lock for sure. But this one pretty much took them out of the equation, especially since Stanford took down Georgia Tech in 4. This kind of was a little bit of a trap game for the Cardinal, but they were able to work their way back, especially after that losing set 2. They responded really well by winning set 3 convincingly. And then set 4, they were able to kind of grind that one out, take that fourth set 25-22, as the Cardinal were led by Aaliyah Rubin and Jordan Harvey, both having 13 kills. They also got 12 kills from Julia Blashoff, who is a budding star. Lizzie Andrew had 9 kills. Erica Sayer, 8 kills. As a team, Stanford hit 314, and they also had 8 blocks as a team, and they had 5 aces. Even though they missed 11 serves, it's still pretty solid night for them. Georgia Tech only hit 206, as the Yellow Jackets were led by Anna Fedorowicz, who had 16 kills. Noemi Despain added 10 kills. It wasn't enough, though. I mean, let's be honest. Georgia Tech wasn't Georgia Tech's like they have been in years past. And I forgot to mention that Arizona State clinched the Big 12 championship. They took down Cincinnati in 4. SMU took down Florida State in 4. Number 10, Wisconsin took down Northwestern in an ugly 4 sets. Now, Northwestern taking a set off of Wisconsin actually marked the first time the Wildcats did that since, I think, 10 years ago. It's been a minute since Northwestern has taken a set off of Wisconsin. So for them to do that was pretty darn impressive. And then speaking of Big Ten, we had the upset of the night. We had number 19, Minnesota, taking down number 11, Purdue in 4, which was a massive win, especially since Minnesota's been through the ringer and then some. Julia Hansen led the way with 19 kills. You had Kelly Kinney adding 14 kills. Minnesota hit 252. They weren't too terrible. I mean, their stats don't really show it. I mean, they got outdug. They got outblocked as well. They missed half the serves that Purdue missed, and then they did get out-aced a little bit, only by 2. Meanwhile, Purdue actually hit 276. So while Purdue had the better numbers, Minnesota just wound up out-scrapping a very good Purdue team who has shattered all expectations. And again, you got to remember that this Minnesota team has lost 4 of its starters to season-ending injury. So the fact that Minnesota was able to pull off a win was pretty impressive. So great job to the Golden Gophers. And then nothing really too out of the ordinary. I mean, there was number 23 Baylor beating TCU in 5. You had number 25 BYU beating Utah in 5, which put Utah in a precarious situation where they had to win their last match. Otherwise, they would not have made the NCAA tournament. My boy Marcus looks great. He pops in the chat room. He says, salute to you too, Marcus. I appreciate you. Hopefully you'll be around for when I tell you the good news, good sir, but I digress. Anyway, yeah, pretty much nothing really too out of the ordinary. So there you have it right there. I'll get into the Big West Conference tournament a little later. Anyway, so that was that for Wednesday. Happy belated Thanksgiving, everybody. I don't know if I mentioned that last show, but hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Then we jumped to Friday. We had number 1 Nebraska sweeping number 25 Penn State in straight sets, which was not surprising at all. And then you also had number 10 Wisconsin sweeping Minnesota, which, look, I know everyone wanted to see Minnesota pulling off another upset, but honestly, this is Wisconsin we're talking about. If they didn't have Charlie Furbringer, I think Wisconsin would have had a little bit tough sledding, but I think Minnesota kind of got a little too high on the highs of that win over Purdue. And then I got to make note of this little win right here. USC took down Michigan in 4. USC also beat Michigan State in straight sets, which pretty much locked up a top 16 seed for USC. And spoiler alert, they did get a top 16 seed. I hate to have to spoil that already since we're not quite into the NCAA tournament portion, but USC winning out. I gotta say, USC really impressed me this past week. I was generally impressed with the women of Troy just because they had 4 really tough matches. They took down a very good Oregon team whom they not beaten on the road in 6 years in 4 sets, which was pretty good. Not this past Saturday, but the previous Saturday, they swept an Illinois team who was fighting for its NCAA tournament lives. Spoiler alert: Illinois wound up losing out. They pretty much finished under 500, and that was pretty much their season. That was pretty much that. And then they also swept Michigan State, which the first set in that match was pretty close. USC needed a late run to take that first set, and then they pretty much went from there. And then against Michigan really made USC sweat. The first two sets, USC needed to grind that one out, and they needed a late run for both of those sets. And then set 3, it looked like USC had a chance, but Michigan with a late little comeback. Well, I wouldn't say late little comeback, but some late Michigan magic. They were able to take that third set, but then set 4 was all USC, as USC just dominated in that 4th set. The women of Troy were led by London Weejay, who had 20 kills. She had 11 digs. She hit 372. Adania Famuina added 15 kills. Abigail Mullen added 11 kills. So it was pretty much a pin-heavy day for USC. They didn't really get too much out of their middles. So it's funny because USC is kind of a finicky team. It's like USC one match will have their middles dominate like they did against Oregon. And then the next match they'll have their pins dominate like they did against Michigan. USC did hit 313, which was pretty good. They had 7 aces, 3 of which went to Mullen, which was pretty solid. Taylor Decker led the dig department for USC with 15. Reese Messer had 10 digs to go along with 48 assists. As a team, USC had 10 blocks, and they had 53 digs overall. Michigan, on the other hand, they didn't have too many blocks. They only had 7.5 blocks, only 43 digs, which isn't going to win you a whole lot of matches, and only 4 aces with 11 missed serves. And Michigan did miss, Michigan only hit 207, as Allison Jacobs led the way with 14 kills. Ella Dimitrition added 12 kills. So overall, it wasn't a bad match for Michigan. And spoiler alert, Michigan did make the NCAA tournament. So Aaron Virtue's team has come a long way. Like, you compare this team to last year's team, that's a massive difference. But yeah, Michigan, I'll give them a lot of credit, and they were coming off of a 5-set loss to UCLA, but USC came in hungry just because they wanted to host. And I did not know this. This is going to be the first time since 2018 that USC is going to be hosting the first couple rounds of the NCAA tournament. So good on USC for taking care of business and not relying on the committee. So there you have it right there. And then I guess now that we're talking about Big Ten upsets, this was kind of a big upset. We had Rutgers beating Washington in 4. Now, I know Washington was pretty much eliminated from the NCAA tournament contention just because they had a record under 500. But still, Rutgers beating Washington was kind of surprising. But it is what it is, and Rutgers came in more hungrier than normal. Anyway, moving on. Saturday, we had number 1 Nebraska sweeping Ohio State. And with Nebraska sweeping Ohio State, they completed their 30-0 season. They also went 20-0, which I think was the first time since 2009 when Penn State did it, when they went undefeated. This Nebraska team is a freaking wagon. They only dropped one set all Big Ten, which was pretty insane. That was to UCLA, which they actually can have a legit excuse where obviously it's a West Coast swing, and also UCLA didn't have Terraflex, which it's so hard to maneuver without when you're not on Terraflex. But I digress. So yeah, Nebraska being 30-0, like I mentioned, they're the only undefeated team in NCAA women's volleyball, and now they are only a few matches away from creating the perfect season, which only a few teams have done, which 2 of which were Penn State, and then 1 of which they actually did. The first ever undefeated team was Long Beach State, which is my alma mater, which I'll get into in a little bit. Anyway, but moving on, number 4 Pitt swept Georgia Tech to clinch a share of the ACC title. And then you had number 5 Stanford outlasting number 7 Louisville in 5, which was pretty darn impressive if you ask me. So Stanford and Pitt shared the ACC title, but since Stanford has the head-to-head over Pitt, they were able to get the automatic qualifier. So great job to Stanford. Stanford only has 2 seniors on their team. 2 seniors. And then they were able to do that. That was a pretty darn good win. And keep in mind, they were actually coming off of a little bit of an emotional 4-set win over Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech kind of threw everything and then some at them. And it was also senior night. They honored Aaliyah Rubin and I forget the other senior. I'm sorry. But Stanford, being a young team, they really grew up very fast. So great job to Stanford. SMU outlasted NC State in 5, which was pretty crazy if you ask me. And then we had number 11 Purdue taking down number 17 Indiana in 4, which was pretty darn impressive. Now the Boilermakers, that's a nice little bounce back win, and especially in a rivalry match like that, as Purdue was led by Kenna Woolard, who had 15 kills. Akasha Anderson had 11 kills, and then they got Taylor Anderson down for 7 kills and 10 digs. As a team, Purdue only hit 197, but they held Indiana to only 106. So I felt like one of those weird matches where Purdue didn't really hit all that much, but their offense did enough to pull out the victory. As Purdue also had 51 digs, they also had a whopping 15 blocks as a team, and they had a blistering 9 service aces, which was very nice. Only missed 4 serves, by the way. Indiana had 8 service aces, but missed 10 serves as well. They had 46 digs, and then they also had 9 blocks as a team, as the Hoosiers were led by Avery Tatum, who had 14 kills. Spoiler alert for Indiana, they will be hosting in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. So it's been a minute since that's happened. I think the first time since 2010. So gotta give Steve Aird his flowers. I mean, obviously it's been a roller coaster of a season, and obviously Steve Aird won at Penn State, and I think they swept at Penn State for the first time this season, and he was obviously emotional about it because his teammate passed away back when he played at Penn State, but I digress. And then you had number 14 Miami reverse sweeping North Carolina. Now, Miami is an interesting team. So they wound up sweeping or winning both of their matches against NC State, and they also reverse swept North Carolina, beat them for a second time this season. But despite this, and spoiler alert, Miami is not hosting the first couple rounds of the NCAA tournament. And if you're a Miami fan, you got to be sick to your stomach, because I'm not going to say this was the reason why my Miami isn't hosting. I'm pretty sure the loss to Cal also kind of doomed them. But Miami was led by Flo Marie Heredia Cullen, who had 36 kills. She was Superwoman yet again. She did have 21 hitting errors, but she had to be Supergirl. She had to basically will Miami to victory. Jasmine Vergara and Dahlia Wilson both had 11 kills. As a team, Miami hit 151, which obviously kind of entails the 21 hitting errors from Flo Marie Heredia Cullen. North Carolina, they hit 145, so they hit no better than Miami, as the Tar Heels were led by Safi Hampton, who had 13 kills. Laney Smith added 12 kills. So long story short for North Carolina, this is kind of a little bit of a disappointing loss for them. I mean, they were at home. They had a chance to make a statement, but unfortunately that was not the case. So tough one for North Carolina, but hey, it is what it is sometimes, and that's just how the ball bounces. Then you had TCU taking down Houston in 4. You had number 25 BYU taking down Colorado in 4. Kansas State swept Iowa State, which was very nice. Which pretty much, spoiler alert, Kansas State did make the NCAA tournament. So there you have it right there. And I'm pretty much going to put it at that. So that's pretty much going to do it for the Week 14 recap. But yeah, Nebraska is still undefeated. The ACC crown was shared by Pitt and Stanford. Arizona State wound up winning the Big 12 crown. I think they clinched it last week. Not this past week, but the previous week. And then Kentucky was the SEC representative. So that was very nice. So now we're actually going to go to some Big West Conference women's volleyball, because I actually had the honor of attending 1 out of 2 days when it came to the Big West Conference championships in women's volleyball. So the first day was UC Santa Barbara and CSUN and Long Beach State and UC Irvine. Long story short, it was pretty much just the brooms were broken out in both matches. UC Santa Barbara really handled CSUN all that well. They really handled them very well. I thought CSUN was going to give them a little bit more of a run for their money, but unfortunately, I think inexperience kind of caught up to them, and I think UC Santa Barbara showed their depth. They showed why they beat the likes of San Diego and Kansas State, which were 2 very good wins. And then Long Beach State, they pretty much mowed down UC Irvine for the most part. Set 3 was a little close, though. I think UC Irvine had their best chance to take a set off of Long Beach, but unfortunately, it was just not meant to be. So an interesting fun fact about that, the first round of the Big West Conference Championship. So back when the tournament, so the tournament's been around for 3 years. The first year when the first round occurred, the matches, both quarterfinal matches were decided in 5. Last year, when the matches were had in the Big West Conference Championships in the quarterfinals, the matches were decided in 4. This year, the quarterfinals were decided in 3. So I'm not saying the bar was set below, but I'm just saying that it seems like the first round of the tournament got shorter by the set. So that's kind of your Snapple fun fact right there. And then the semifinals, it was UC Davis versus UC Santa Barbara, and then Cal Poly versus Long Beach State. So UC Davis, UC Santa Barbara. Davis wound up winning in 4. Very good match, extremely good match. All the sets were close, and then set 4 was decided in overtime. Well, in the end, UC Davis was able to pull off the victory after an errant pass from the Gauchos. And you feel for UC Santa Barbara. They threw everything and more at UC Davis. Ava Travis had herself an outstanding match. And even the freshman, Ava Ostavar, had herself an amazing match in the 6-2 offense. And you feel for UC Santa Barbara because they, going into that match, they actually had the highest RPI of all the Big West Conference teams. Unfortunately, Davis just had the more talent, and Davis advanced to the Big West Conference Championship Finals. Now, Long Beach State, Cal Poly was kind of a different story. It was kind of the same. The first 3 sets were close. Cal Poly went up 2-1, and then set 4, I just think losing that close set 3 was what derailed Long Beach State's chances of pushing the match to 5, as Cal Poly wound up running through Long Beach in that 4th set. I think it was like 25-17, 25-18. Regardless, it was pretty much all Cal Poly. And something that I've been pretty much harping about when it comes to Long Beach State is that if you want to beat Long Beach State, you just got to run the middle. Chloe LaLuge had herself a monster performance against Long Beach State. And even though that's not what Cal Poly wanted to do, they obviously wanted to get their other hitters involved. I think it was best that they ran the middle, and Long Beach State had 0 answer for LaLuge and Charlotte Kelly. So it was pretty much all chalk up until the Big West Conference Championship Finals, where it was 1 seed Davis versus 2 seed Cal Poly. And Cal Poly wound up beating Davis in the final in 4. Guess who called the entire tournament correctly for the 3rd straight year? This guy. I know I'm kind of letting my ego get the best of me, but I've called this Big West Conference Championship perfectly for the last 3 years, which has been the entirety of when the tournament has been. So, which has been the longevity of how long the tournament has been. So if you ever want someone to talk Big West women's volleyball, I'm your guy. And if you ever need someone to predict Big West Conference Championship in women's volleyball correctly, I'm your guy. Anyway, so yeah, my takeaway unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to attend the championship match between Cal Poly and Davis, but my takeaway for that is it's no surprise that Cal Poly just had a lot of talent on their team. Like Cal Poly, I think, puts a lot of service pressure on a lot of teams. Cal Poly is just a strong team. Chloe Lelouch was named tournament MVP. And then you also had a lot of unsung heroes like Kendall Bashir, Annabelle Falcon, Emma Frederick, Emmy Bolus. She was outstanding as well. So overall, Cal Poly they were just on one when it came to the Big West Conference Championships. And when their serve was on, they were on. And Chloe Lelouch was absolutely amazing. Now, unfortunately for UC Davis, I mean, this is spoiler alert. UC Davis did wind up missing the NCAA tournament. They still have yet to make the NCAA tournament in Division I in women's volleyball, but it doesn't take away from an outstanding season from the Aggies. They did have one standout win, which was against not UC Davis, Utah State. Unfortunately, that's kind of where the buck stopped. They didn't really have too many big time wins outside of that. They also didn't have any bad losses. I mean, maybe the loss to Long Beach State kind of derailed them, but still, you got to give it up to UC Davis. They had a fantastic season, but unfortunately, it was just not meant to be. And I feel bad for them because if you saw the press conference between Dan Connors and his team, they were pretty emotional. I've never seen Dan Connors so emotional after a tough loss, and I feel for the guy just because I think Davis could have beaten Cal Poly, but Cal Poly was just on their A game. I wound up watching the replay of that match. Cal Poly was just lethal all over the place, except for set 3. Set 3 was pretty much all Davis. I had a feeling Davis wasn't going to go quietly into the night, so there you have it. So a new champion was crowned in the Big West Conference Championships, and that team was Cal Poly. And Cal Poly deserved it. It's the first time they've made the big dance since 2019 when they last wound up winning an NCAA tournament match. So can Cal Poly repeat its success from 2019? That's going to depend. But I think they do have a good legit chance. I think they are a legit team. I think they're a team that's not to be underestimated. They're not just a team that can win at home. They can win any place. So underestimate Cal Poly at your own peril. All right, but that is going to do it for the whole NCAA Women's Volleyball Week 14 recap, as well as the Big West Conference Championship recap. So in terms of the ABC, okay, this is something I will say. I'm not too big on the ABCA rankings at the end of the season. I mean, I'm just not a big ABCA type of guy when the end of the season hits, just because it's the end of the season. And honestly, it's not all that great. It's not all that interesting just because the rankings of the tournament seeds, the tournament bracket has come out, and we pretty much are on to the NCAA tournament. We don't care about the ABCA rankings unless it's the final one. So obviously, Nebraska is still your number one. Nobody dropped out. The team that had the biggest jump was BYU, and for good reason. So overall, for BYU, I was just generally impressed by them. I thought they showed a lot of hunger, but you're about to see that I'm about to see them pretty soon. So overall, that is pretty much that for the ABCA rankings. But now we got to jump on into the NCAA tournament and all of its glory. Oh, it's absolutely amazing. And 64 teams have entered, or 64 teams are entering, but only one shall be crowned tournament champion. So I didn't have time to make the full-on brackets, but just follow along when it comes to the NCAA tournament or NCAA website. So number one, so the top 4 overall seeds were as follows: Nebraska, Kentucky, Pitt. I think it's, Was it Pitt? Yeah, no, it was Nebraska, Kentucky, Texas, and Pitt. Bottom line is that they were the 4 overall number 1 seeds of their region. So, yeah, so going to the Nebraska region, it's Nebraska versus LIU, which Long Island University, which obviously Nebraska. Look, nothing against Long Island University, but it would take a massive miracle for LIU to win. And you got to remember, Nebraska is playing on a high level. So honestly, they're probably going to roll through their first round matchup against LIU. Now, this matchup is now a little interesting. Kansas State versus San Diego. So these two teams have a common opponent with one another, UC Santa Barbara, which they both lost to. So Kansas State is back into the NCAA tournament, which I think is pretty awesome sauce. Shout out to former Set Point guest Steve Astor, and also shout out to my buddy Andrew Mabry. Both are assistant coaches on the Kansas State staff. So I will say this about Kansas State: they are a darn good team, and they deserve to make the NCAA tournament. That said, San Diego is red hot. I think they've won 16 matches in a row. So underestimate the Toreros at your own peril. Then you also have Miami of Florida taking on Tulsa. And this is where Miami is not hosting. They probably were just edged out in terms of hosting by like an increment. So unfortunately for Miami, they will not be hosting. They're actually in the Kansas region for the first 2 rounds, as Kansas will be hosting High Point. I expect Miami to be a barn burner. Honestly, I expect that to go 5. And Miami will go as far as Flo Marie Heredia Colon takes them. So overall, I think that's going to be a very fun matchup if the two teams stick with one another. But let's be honest, I think Miami should get past Tulsa, and then Kansas should get past High Point. And Kansas loves to go 5, so I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas does go 5. Then we have Texas A&M and Campbell, and then Stephen F. Austin and TCU. So Texas A&M will be hosting the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament in the Nebraska region. But it's only for the first 2 rounds. And the TCU matchup's kind of interesting. I mean, TCU fans will have to go too far because College Station, it shouldn't be that far from Fort Worth. But A&M TCU is going to be a nice little humdinger of a matchup. And then you also have in the Louisville region for the first 2 rounds, Western Kentucky and Marquette, and then you've got Louisville, Loyola, Chicago. If the seedings hold up, Nebraska will be taking on Louisville, which will be the DBK or Danny Bus Boom Kelly matchup, which I think is going to be really cool if you ask me. But Louisville has to get to the regional final, which would mean they got to take down the likes of probably Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky Marquette's going to be an interesting matchup just because Marquette's battle tested. Western Kentucky is also battle tested, but something's got to give here. So that is the Nebraska region, or the upper left portion of the bracket. To the lower left portion, you've got Pitt at UMB hosting UMBC, and then you also got Xavier versus Michigan. Yeah, another big East Conference team makes the NCAA tournament, and that is Xavier. So pretty cool to see Xavier taking on Michigan. Only problem is that Michigan is pretty darn good, if you ask me. I mean, Michigan has improved from last year. Let's keep it a buck. The Wolverines are going to be a tough matchup for Xavier, but we shall see. I mean, Xavier's gotten this far. The fact that they made it all the way to the, I think they were the ones that made it to the Big East Conference Championship, was pretty impressive. So gotta keep an eye out for Xavier, Michigan. But Pitt should roll through UMBC. Again, nothing against UMBC, but I think Pitt is just playing on a whole other level. I mean, they've been a little iffy, but I think they're playing better ever since the Stanford lost. Then you have Iowa State versus St. Thomas of Minnesota. They will not be hosting, as they're going to be in the Minnesota quadrant in terms of the first 2 rounds, as Minnesota will host Fairfield. Now, St. Thomas is an interesting team. So they were the ones that wound up winning the Summit League, if I'm not mistaken. They were a bid stealer, which I thought was pretty darn awesome, if you ask me. And thankfully for their sake, they don't have to go too far. But Iowa State is a tough matchup. The Cyclones are going to be raring to go. And then Minnesota, even though they are banged up to high heaven, expect them to come ready to go in the first couple rounds. Then you have in the Lafayette quadrant, Purdue and Wright State, and then you have Baylor and Arkansas State. Baylor's an interesting team. I think Baylor is kind of that Dr. Jekyll, Mrs. Hyde type of team, and then Purdue has shattered expectations. Wright State's not a team you want to underestimate, though. Wright State is a pretty darn good team, and then Arkansas State coming out of the Sun Belt is not an easy feat to accomplish as well. And then you have the Dallas quadrant, where SMU will be hosting Central Arkansas, and then Florida and Rice will be facing one another in the Dallas quadrant. That is an interesting matchup, Florida and Rice, just because Florida hasn't been the Florida of years past, obviously with a new regime, new head coach, and a little bit of roster turnover. But I expect Florida to give Rice all that they can handle. I think that one's going to be a great little matchup right there. That's probably one of the better first-round matchups. So that's the lower left part of the bracket. Now for the upper right part of the bracket, first and foremost, let's go over the number one seed of the upper right region, the Texas region. So Texas will be hosting it pretty much has home court advantage throughout the entire regional playoffs, as Texas will host Florida A&M, and then South Florida will be playing Penn State in Austin. Interesting little concept. If Texas and Penn State both advance, which I imagine they should, that'll be a good matchup. Texas and Penn State, even though Penn State is nowhere near as good as they have been, as they were last year and in years past, I think that still should be a pretty darn good matchup. And then you have the Indiana quadrant, where Indiana will be hosting Toledo, and then Colorado will be playing American. That's a pretty darn good matchup, if you ask me. I think Indiana is going to be a very dangerous team. Don't be surprised if they make a little bit of a deep run. I don't expect them to beat Texas, but I expect them to make Texas sweat. And then Colorado is kind of that little engine that could. I mean, it took them a while to get respect from the AVCA. I know they still have the loss to Colorado State, but the Buffs are a really darn good team. I think they're a very underrated team. I know American might be a little bit of a challenge, but I'm certain Colorado will get past it. Then we have the Wisconsin quadrant, where Wisconsin will host Eastern Illinois. And then you have North Carolina and UTEP. That one is a very good matchup. UTEP is a very fascinating matchup. I think they were an at-large, and North Carolina is also obviously an at-large. I mean, UTEP has been battle-tested. I think North Carolina is an interesting matchup just because I want to see what North Carolina can do following their heartbreaker of a loss to Miami. But I think North Carolina should be up to the challenge. I mean, they were battle-tested throughout most of ACC play. And then Wisconsin is playing a whole lot better volleyball, especially with Charlie Furbringer back. So expect Wisconsin to obviously roll through Eastern Illinois. And then we have the Stanford quadrant, where Stanford will host Utah Valley, and then South Dakota State will play Arizona. South Dakota State was another at-large, as Arizona, who wound up winning the NIVC, they are actually back in the NCAA tournament after a one-year hiatus or a hiatus. Either way, Arizona's back after winning the NIVC, which I actually will get into in a little bit. So that's that for the entirety of the upper right portion of the bracket. Now for the bottom right portion of the bracket. So we have Kentucky as the number one overall seed in the the number one seed in the lower right bracket. They have home court advantage throughout the entire regional playoffs, as Kentucky will host Wofford. And then you have UCLA playing Georgia Tech, which I think is another interesting matchup. Now, I'm glad to see UCLA is back in the NCAA tournament. It's great to see them back. I mean, I'm sure UCLA fans have been missing UCLA in the NCAA women's volleyball tournament. But Georgia Tech is an interesting matchup. Now, I'm certain UCLA should win. I can't imagine them losing to Georgia Tech, because Tech is nowhere near as good as they have been in years past. I want to say that UCLA should be the lock of the day. They should be I expect them to win that little matchup. And then we have the Southern California region, or the Los Angeles region, as this is as special announcement. I plan on attending the regional playoffs, or the first 2 rounds of the Los Angeles regional of the NCAA tournament, as USC will be hosting Princeton. And then before that, we have Cal Poly playing BYU. That's going to be a very fun matchup. Cal Poly BYU. Now, BYU is starting to play a little bit better volleyball, but Cal Poly is still Cal Poly. I mean, I think the loss to UC Irvine was more so UC Irvine needed to win that matchup just because they want to send their seniors off with a win, and they want to make the Big West Conference championships. I think that was more so UC Irvine needed to play with a sense of urgency, whereas Cal Poly, I think, played their most ugliest match of them all. So Cal Poly BYU, I think, could be the first round matchup of the best first round matchup, debatably so. And then USC Princeton, I imagine USC is going to win. I mean, I feel bad for those that have to deal with the 7:30. I feel bad for Princeton fans because that's a 10:30 p.m. Eastern start time. So, gosh, that's brutal. Then you have the Creighton regional, the Nebraska regional. Well, not the Nebraska regional, but the Creighton regional, where Creighton will host Northern Colorado. And then you've got Northern Iowa taking on Utah. Utah was a team that surged late. I know they had to win their last match to be eligible for the NCAA tournament, but they were able to do so, and they were able to clutch up when it mattered most. And I'm thankful that Utah was able to make the NCAA tournament, just because Utah is a good team. It's just a matter of they got to put everything together. So watch out for the Utes. And then closing off, we have the Tempe quadrant, where Arizona State will be hosting Coppin State. The Arizona State will be hosting the first couple rounds, and then Tennessee and Utah State will also be in Tempe as well. I always say this for a lot of 7-seed matches, but I think this one's going to be a good one as well. I want to see what Utah State can do. They almost had a little bit of a collapse against boys. Okay, not collapse, but a little bit of a boo-boo against Boise State in the Mountain West Conference tournament. But Utah State will be an interesting matchup. But I think Tennessee should be ready for them. I want to say Tennessee should be a lock to beat Utah State as well. I mean, if we get the Tennessee that looked good against the likes of a lot of SEC teams and that played SEC teams tough, I think Tennessee can win that one easy. But if we get the Tennessee that played ugly, then I think Utah State has a chance. But honestly, I trust Tennessee more than Utah State. And then Arizona State should roll through Coppin State as well. So that is that right there when it comes to the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament. Again, follow along. If you weren't following along, follow along when it comes to on the NCAA Women's Volleyball website, or the NCAA website altogether. So I will say this. Thank you to Cheese Trader, who is a good follower of mine, good volleyball follower overall. He's a Wisconsin fan, but he did give me unfortunately, I couldn't see the NCAA Women's Volleyball Selection Show, which really sucks. But he was able to give me the last 4 in, and then the first 4 out. So the last 4 in were North Carolina, Michigan, South Florida, and then Arizona/Georgia Tech. So technically, it's the last 5 in. So whatever happened with the last 4 ins when it comes to NCAA tournaments. But yeah, I guess the last 5 in were North Carolina, Michigan, South Florida, Arizona, and Georgia Tech. And then the first few out, he lists a lot of teams. First few out were Villanova. God, you got to feel bad for the Big East. Avid Volley, who is well known on the volleyball social media verse. He really wanted a 4-conference NCAA tournament, which featured 4 Big East Conference teams. But that's just life in the big city, unfortunately. First few out were Villanova, Pepperdine, which, look, Pepperdine does have a few good wins. They beat San Diego, UC Santa Barbara, both of which were in the top 50 of the RPI. And then they also have a win over UCLA. But unfortunately, they just could not get over the hump in terms of the West Coast Conference. And the West Coast Conference is just such kind of a tough conference to get another at-large in, unless all the West Coast Conference teams were pulling off upsets. Like if they didn't have a few more like bad losses, like if they didn't lose to Santa Clara, I think Pepperdine might have gotten in. But man, that's life in the big city. So the other teams that were first few out were Texas State, which always a good team year in and year out. Unfortunately, they just kind of got bid stolen by Arkansas State. Same can be said for James Madison. They were bid stolen as well. Cheese Trader also tells me that Oregon and Cincinnati were both in the top 50 with top 50 strength of schedule and 2 top 25 wins. So they had to be second out. So I guess he also mentions that Oregon and Cincinnati were also the first few out. So I guess we'll call this the first 6 out. So the first 6 out were Villanova, Pepperdine, Texas State, James Madison, Oregon, and Cincinnati. So, man, I thought Oregon would have made the tournament. I think if they had beaten USC, that would have been a big win for them. I also maybe think that Rutgers, losing to Rutgers also, okay, they didn't lose to Rutgers. They lost a set to Rutgers, but I think kind of struggling with Rutgers kind of didn't help their cause. Losing to Michigan didn't help their cause. Losing to Northwestern didn't help their cause. And then, I mean, they beat UCLA twice, but UCLA wasn't really top 25. So it was tough for Oregon. And you got to admit, a team like that had a lot of roster turnover and a first-year head coach, the fact that they almost made the NCAA tournament is promising. They have a lot of players returning, such as Alana Clemente. I think Oregon will be back sooner rather than later. I just think that it's unfortunate that that they wound up missing the tournament by pretty much a few duckbills and whatnot. But I digress. Anyway, but again, I will be at the USC quadrant of the first couple rounds. So I will be seeing Cal Poly and BYU take the court with one another, as well as Princeton and USC. I don't know about you, but I think the Cal Poly BYU match should start at 4 p.m. instead of like 5 p.m. But I kind of understand why, because normally most matches are like at the very least 2 hours, maybe 90 minutes on average. The max is probably like 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours. So heaven forbid if Cal Poly BYU goes 5, then I expect the USC Princeton matchup to be a 8 p.m. start, which would be ugly. So, but I'm gonna be there. I am looking forward to it, and I kind of wish that the second round matchup in the Los Angeles quadrant would be on Saturday, but I guess they don't want to have a gap day for like the first few rounds, just because that wouldn't be fair, just because you don't want to slow down the momentum or make teams rusty, or heaven forbid a player gets hurt in practice the following day. So I understand why they're not going to have gap days, but I digress. All right, that's that for the NCAA women's volleyball tournament breakdown. We're almost nearing an hour when it comes to this thing. Davidson Crooks, he says, hit that like button. Thank you, Davidson, for tuning in. I appreciate you. So let's take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we've got some NCAA men's volleyball news, and we have to recap the MLV draft from last week. So keep it locked here. You're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, Where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Hockey fans, I'm Adam Kernick.
And I'm Zach Puplis.
Together, we are the newest version of Hockey Talk on IE Sports Radio, The Neutral Zone.
Zone.
We love hockey, but we also know it's not everyone's first sport. So we want to make this show as much for new fans as for the diehards.
Whether you can name all the Swedes on the 08 Red Wings Stanley Cup team, or if you can't tell if Varlamov is a goalie or the latest trendy vodka, we're here to help. With facts, figures, and outrageous fans, we bring you all the hard-hitting hockey news you can handle, while still keeping it fun and on the rails. Well, mostly.
So tune in every week as we go around the hockey world, from college to Canada, the minors and the majors, and everywhere in between.
So bring your cellies,
And your one-timers,
you wicked wristas.
and be sure to protect your five-hole.
Catch the Neutral Zone every week on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
We promise not to pick on the Arizona Coyotes every episode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr., and I'm welcoming you to take another lap with the fastest show on IE Sports Radio. Yes, this is the Extra Mile with me and my co-hosts Christopher Lehman and Michael Ward. We talk everything racing, from NASCAR to IndyCar to Formula One to limited hydroplanes, endurance racing, the NHRA, and more. So come join us for an hour of great racing talk and a lot of fun as well on the Extra Mile, Thursdays at 8 p.m. only on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows. Also check out our sponsors. We would greatly appreciate it. Well, with that being said, let's get on back to the volleyball action. So let's actually talk some NCAA men's volleyball. So big news in the AM of the NCAA men's volleyball world. The University of Pacific is bringing back its NCAA men's volleyball program, which I thought was awesome because Pacific did have a men's volleyball team all the way back from 1993 all the way to 2014, and then they dropped that program, which was absolutely heartbreaking, unfortunately. And why is my thing like the timer must be on when it comes to this thing, which is not convenient. But anyway, yeah, for this news is absolutely amazing, and I have to give a shout out to Matthew Houlihan for what he did. He is an alum of the school, which I think is pretty awesome, if you ask me. I think it's great what he did when it came to stepping up. If you see his post on Instagram, make sure to tell him thank you. And I think it's pretty awesome what he did, just because I think it's pretty amazing that he was able to step in and pretty much help University of Pacific bring back its men's volleyball program and whatnot. So overall, I think it's great news. It's awesome for the game of volleyball. I think that pretty much we need to keep growing the game of volleyball. And I only wish a certain other school from Arizona would bring back their NCAA men's volleyball program. Looking at you, Grand Canyon. But for Pacific, they will be back in the MPSF where they once belonged, which I think is pretty awesome if you ask me. I will also just say that it's kind of fitting that they're back in the NCAA tournament, or not back in the NCAA tournament. They're back in the MPSF, but there is one qualm I will say. It's like the MPSF is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's basically just the California Conference. You might as well just change the name from MPSF to the California Conference, because there's only one team outside of California, and that is BYU, which I think is pretty funny. I mean, Joe McCurry, who is one of the budding volleyball personalities, he kind of replied to my comment. He says, you might as well just name it the Cali Conference. I call it the Big Ten California, because there's no Big Ten Conference. But you kind of have to wonder. So in 2027, Pacific will be back. The MPSF will have 11 teams in the conference. So it's already tough having certain teams not play other teams twice, and vice versa. I think you have to make a Big Ten conference. I think you have to make a Big Ten conference overall. Have teams like USC, UCLA, Penn State, Ohio State, maybe BYU, maybe Loyola Chicago, maybe Princeton, maybe throw in Purdue Fort Wayne, and who is another team that probably deserves the Big Ten conference that's in there. Maybe Harvard as well. That sounds like a brutal gauntlet for some of the other teams, especially since UCLA and UCLA and USC get all of the big time transfers, or not big time transfers, but big time recruits, as well as BYU. But I think it would be unique to have a Big Ten conference, just so we're not just trying to have a Big Ten showcase and whatnot. So overall, but then again, you would have the MPSF like just being dominated by like Pepperdine and Stanford, which wouldn't be too terrible. I mean, but it would probably be those two as the main ringers, unless Pacific just has something to say about that. But anyway, all this would have been avoided had Grand Canyon not dropped their men's volleyball program. But no, Grand Canyon had to be stupid. Anyway, but Pacific bring back their program is absolutely amazing. I'm certain other alumni other than Matthew Houlihan are jumping for joy. Like coaches, NCAA women's volleyball coaches who played or coached at Pacific, such as Dan Fisher, Chris Tomas, are probably over the moon right now, which I think is pretty awesome. Kevin Pratt is also over the moon right now. Anyone that played men's volleyball at Pacific is probably over the moon right now and happy as a clam. So great job to the University of Pacific. And also shout to USA Volleyball and First Point Volleyball for helping pretty much plant the seeds, and for First Point Volleyball writing the check as well. I think it's a check for $250,000, which I think is pretty cool as well. So overall for Pacific, I think it's absolutely amazing that the program is thriving, is back to being the program. And I think this is great for NCAA men's volleyball as a whole, just because now we have a program with a men's and women's volleyball program, and Pacific will draw a lot of attention for the talented Northern California players from schools like Archbishop Mitty and so on and so forth. And who knows, maybe it'll draw attention from other regions of the world as well. So for those that want to go to Pacific, but unfortunately, and wanted to play volleyball but couldn't, well, now your hope is pretty much brought back. So I think Pacific is going to make a great little comeback. And you got to remember that Pacific had a lot of great history back then. They were a team that did take down number one ranked teams such as Pepperdine and Long Beach State. And I think that this is a big move to bring them back. So I can't wait to see what they'll do in 2027. I, for one, am happy that Pacific is being brought back. I wouldn't call them a new program. I would just call them a returning program. So I would say welcome Pacific, but I feel it's best to say welcome back. All right, that is that for that little bit of news. I think it's absolutely amazing. So now later on in the day, I think it was around like 2 o'clock, we had some interesting and big time volleyball news. And this was out of the Long Beach area where Alan Knipe announced his retirement, which was absolutely astounding. This was mind boggling. I did not see this coming by any means necessary. So overall, this was very shocking. So Alan Knipe says this, and I'm going to read this word for word. Long Beach State gave me far more than a place to coach. It became my home and was and is one of the great honors of my life. As a proud alumnus, leading the men's volleyball program was never just a job. It was a lifelong mission to mentor young men who are willing to commit to something bigger than themselves. I will always be proud of what we built together. But the legacy I cherish most is watching our players grow into outstanding men. LB Nation, the best fans of the country, thank you. There is nothing in college volleyball like coaching in front of you, whether it be in the pyramid or the gold mine. Your loyalty, passion, and love for the sport set the standard nationally. The energy of the pyramid in front of the nation's best fans is something I will always cherish and never forget. You lifted these young men, you lifted our program, and you lifted me. I will always consider myself the luckiest coach in the country, period. I was once told you will know when you know. I guess I know Long Beach State men's volleyball will always live in my heart. I look forward to watching the program continue to grow and thrive for generations to come. I thank God for blessing me with the opportunity to lead this program, and I always will. Alan Knipe. That was the press release from pretty much what he said. And this was actually first reported by the 562. So the 562.org is obviously a legit website. They cover all things Long Beach sports. And big shout to Mike Gardabascio for breaking the news. So part of the article that says this is one of the reasons why Alan Knipe stepped down was because of this is probably going to be an unfortunate thing. It's that Knipe acknowledged that the recent changes in the NCAA, which have made it harder for mid-major universities and also on Olympic sports, were part of the reason why it made it feel like it was his time to pretty much hang up the clipboard. And I'm paraphrasing, by the way. And it's not just him that pretty much did this. I feel this is kind of the same reason why Mary Wise of Florida stepped down. The same reason why John Cook of Nebraska stepped down. So the NCAA has really got to get it together when it comes to this whole thing. And it's also because of like NIL and so on and so forth and increased costs across the board. So it's tough. I mean, I totally understand his stance. And he's been coaching for 25 years. He coached the men's program for 25 years. And you also got to remember that he also had a little bit of a early stint early on, and then he stepped down and handed the reins to Andy Reid to coach the USA men's volleyball program, and then came back. So I think for Alan Knipe, he left a legacy. There's nothing more that needs to be said. Alan Knipe left a legacy when it came to the NCAA men's volleyball world, and in terms of Long Beach State. And the fact that his last game was him winning the national championship with the likes of Moni Nikolov and Skylar Varga and so on and so forth is absolutely astounding. I think it's really amazing that Alan Knipe went out a champion. And look, nothing lasts forever, and I'm just as sad as everyone seeing Alan Knipe step down. And this comes pretty much a month before the season begins. But it is what it is sometimes, and you just have to accept it. I was dreading that this day was eventually going to come, but I'm happy that Alan Knipe goes out a champion. I'm happy for Alan Knipe, and now he gets to focus on his own little program. I think it's like Champions Unlimited or something like that, but I think it's pretty awesome that what he's going to do and how he's going to pretty much raise the youth of volleyball. Yeah, it's called Champions Unlimited, and he's done an excellent job when it comes to that, and we can expect greatness when it comes to this whole thing. So, but my personal thoughts on Alan Knipe, he's just an all-around amazing fella. He would always say, "Hey, how you doing, Teran?" And he was always lively, and he enjoyed my company, and I enjoyed him coaching. He was an absolute, not just an amazing coach, but an amazing friend. And I'm saying this like like something bad happened to him, but Alan Knipe is still with us. Alan is just an overall amazing person. Look, I can't say enough great things about him. Like, some of the things that he makes are great points when it comes to the world of NCAA men's volleyball. Like for instance, when I had him on via a Zoom interview, he talked about the Grand Canyon situation, and he said that the disrespect for the game of NCAA men's volleyball is absolutely disappointing, and I totally agree with him. And honestly, he made a lot of great points about that, and we need to stop cutting programs, and we need to start having accountability and whatnot. And we need to start growing the game, and we need to start platforming the game more, showing the game and growing the game. Like, that's Alan Knight pretty much was kind of the spotlight type of guy, whether he wanted to be in the spotlight or not. And I felt bad. I kind of felt bad when he brought up the Grand Canyon situation, just because everyone pretty much flocked to that, and he made great points. And I wasn't purposely trying to put Alan Knipe in the spotlight. I wasn't trying to say, "Hey, Alan, talk to me about the Grand Canyon situation." But I just asked him what was his biggest volleyball ick, and he said his biggest volleyball ick was the NCAA men's volleyball game just not being treated with the utmost respect. And that is what I love about Alan Knipe. Another thing I like about Alan Knipe is that he is a team first, and he doesn't like to take the glory or the credit. One time when he got his 400th win, post-game press conference, I asked him what it meant to him and how special was this. He obviously said it was a special occasion, winning with some of his wins came with his son, Aiden Knipe. And then obviously the players that he were with had to go through the pandemic and had to have their season cut short back in 2020. But you know what he said? He said it was special, but it's something that I don't want to be taken away from all these amazing young men who put in the work. And I thought to myself when I was recording that, I just thought to myself, that's something Alan Knipe would say, just because he doesn't like to take credit for everything. He likes to basically give credit to his team, acknowledge his team, because the players are the ones that are playing on the court. And Alan Knipe is just someone who coaches so cerebral. Like, he gets the most out of his players, like TJ DeFalco, Skylar Varga, Spencer Olivier, Josh Tuaniga, Nick Amato, Ryan Manugian. The list goes on and on. He is just a guy you want to play for. If I ever were a volleyball player and I wanted to play for any coach, I would want to play for Alan Knipe in terms of the collegiate level. If I had to pick any coach to go to war with in terms of like volleyball wise, I would pick Alan Knipe. And this is no disrespect to all the other coaches I've had on Set Point. This is no disrespect to every coach in the NCAA. I would pick Alan Knipe just because he brings that serious yet smart mentality to the game of NCAA men's volleyball. I just think he's an overall amazing coach. He advocates for the game really well, and overall, I think he's just a great down-to-earth guy. And what he told me one time, it was after an interview. I think it was like after the interview when I interviewed him last season before the National Collegiate Men's Volleyball Tournament. He told me, "I like what you do, Teran. You go about your business." I'm not sure. I want to say he either said that after the interview or he said that during an interview. He told me, "I like what you do, Teran. I like how you go about your business. You're not a big brand name. You don't try to pester people. You don't try to pester people too much, or you don't try to pry information out of anyone." So overall, that really meant a lot what he said, and I really do appreciate all the kind things he would say about me. It really just means a lot, just because I try to do my best when it comes to growing the game of not just NCAA men's volleyball, but volleyball altogether, just because I don't have the resources that everyone else has. I'm not the flashy type of guy. I'm not the type of guy who has like a fancy background setup, or who has access to mobility or access to all sorts of financial resources or any sponsorships or whatnot. But I do the best I can, and the fact that Alan acknowledges that, the fact that Alan is understandable when it comes to that, really means a lot, and it really means the world to me. So I really, really think that it means so much. And thank you, Marcus. He says, the hardest working man in IE Sports Radio. Well, I appreciate that, Marcus. And that's kind of the reason why I'm trying to go to these events. That's the reason why I'm going to the NCAA women's volleyball first couple rounds at USC. That's the reason why I went to the NCAA tournament, men's volleyball tournament, back in 2024. So overall, my whole thing for Alan Knipe is this. I appreciate everything that you did for the NCAA men's volleyball world. I appreciate all the times that I had to interview you, whether it was post-game matches, whether it was via Zoom. It really just meant a lot. I really do appreciate all of the time that he dedicated when it came to me, when it came to all the other reporters, when it came to anything else in the NCAA men's volleyball world, and for all the times that you've been thrust into the spotlight, whether you've intended to be in the spotlight or not. I thank you, because you are the voice of reason. You are the voice of NCAA men's volleyball. No offense to anyone else, but Alan just loves to make amazing points, and he is spot on when it comes to these points. And he is one of kind of the big boys when it comes to NCAA men's volleyball, and he is someone that is not wrong when it comes to any of his takes and whatnot. So overall, I think it's sad that Alan Knipe is going to be stepping down, but I'm looking forward to what he can do with Champions Unlimited. I'm looking forward to what he can do outside of the NCAA men's volleyball realm, and I wish him the best in retirement. I think he's going to have a great retirement, and I'll still get to see him more often than not when it comes to the Long Beach State men's volleyball matches. It's just that, unfortunately, I won't be able to see him coaching. But hey, he'll still be around, and I can't wait to see what happens with the Champions Unlimited, and I can't wait to see what Alan Knipe does in the next chapter of his career. So I have to give him a proper set point salute when it comes to his retirement. And thank you, Alan Knipe. That you will always be a treasured guest on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Anyway, that is that for that little bit of news right there. It's tough. And I hope everyone enjoyed my little spiel of that little speech and whatnot. I know it was a little winded, but honestly, what can you do? Anyway, so moving on. So we're actually going to close off the show when it comes to the Major League Volleyball, or formerly known as the Real Pro Volleyball draft. So the MLV draft was last week. Unfortunately, I could not cover this just because there was a lot of volleyball to discuss, such as high school volleyball and obviously college volleyball, and then the Big West Women's Volleyball Championship I wanted to preview. But the number one overall pick was Mimi Collier. She was drafted by the Dallas Pulse. Yes, the Dallas Pulse is a new team in the MLV, formerly known as the Real Pro Volleyball Federation, or the Pro Volleyball Federation. Either way, Mimi Collier is your number one overall pick in this year's draft. Number two is Ava Martin out of Creighton, but the Atlanta Vibe drafted her. They actually traded with the Columbus Fury, so interesting stuff right there. Ava Martin and I think Leah Edmond is still on that team, unless I'm mistaken. Anyway, Hayden Kubik was the number 3 pick for the San Diego Mojo. Alexis Shelton was the number 4 overall pick, outside hitter from Oklahoma. Interesting. Number 5 pick was Cara Cressy, middle blocker from Louisville. That was selected by the Indy Ignite, last year's reigning champs. Number 6 was, not last year's finalists. Number 6 was the Orlando Valkyries, who are the reigning champs. They selected Bree Kelly out of Pitt/Florida. Number 7 was Avery Carlson, center out of SMU. And then number 8 was Kiara Reinhart, middle blocker out of Creighton. So that's the first round. There are 4 rounds this, so I might as well just go over all the picks. Number 9 was Malia Jones from opposite out of SMU. That was also via a trade. The Dallas Pulse drafted her with the number 9 overall pick. Number 10 pick was from the Columbus Fury. They selected Flo Marie Heredia Colon out of Miami. Dynamite pick right there for the Fury. Number 11 was Candela Alonso Corcelis, outside hitter out of Indiana. That was drafted by the Grand Rapids Rise. The Rise also had the number 4 overall pick. The number 12 overall pick went to the San Diego Mojo. They drafted libero Gillian Grimes out of Penn State. Number 13 was Colby Neal, middle blocker out of Arizona State. That was drafted by the Orlando Valkyries with a 13th overall pick. 14th overall pick was Emma Halter out of Texas. She goes to the Indy Ignite. The number 15 overall pick was Brooke Mosier, setter out of Pitt, drafted by the Omaha Supernovas. And then the number 16 overall pick was Shaylee Myers, outside hitter out of Kansas State. For round 3, the number 17 overall pick went to the San Diego Mojo. They drafted Allison Jacobs out of Michigan. The number 18th pick went to Jordan Wilson, outside hitter from Arizona. She goes to the Grand Rapids Rise. The Dallas Pulse had the number 19 overall pick as they drafted Carter Booth, middle blocker out of Wisconsin / Minnesota. She came from Minnesota. She did originally come from Minnesota because she even said it was full circle. And then number 20 was the Columbus Fury, who had that pick. They selected Maya Winterhoff, middle blocker out of App State. Very interesting pick right there, but okay. Number 21 was picked by the Atlanta Vibe. They selected Jackie Moore, middle blocker out of Vanderbilt. That's a good pick right there. Number 22, the Omaha Supernovas selected Claire Amaral, setter from Iowa. Okay, so they got 2 setters in this draft. If I recall correctly, isn't Sydney Hilly back with the Supernovas? I'm not entirely certain. I'm a little rusty when it comes to the MLV / PVF / whatever you want to call it. Anyway, number 23 pick was to the Atlanta Vibe. They selected Eva Hudson, outside hitter of Kentucky. Pick of the draft right there. Steal of the draft right there. They have Leah Edmonds and Eva Hudson. That is going to be a dynamite offense right there. Dynamite. And Shaylee Myers as well. This team is going to be on a heater. There is no way this team should be stinking. They should be contending for a championship this year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Anyway, the number 24 pick was for the Orlando Valkyries. They selected outside hitter from Florida State, Ian Hankey. And then for the 4th round, Hattie Bray, middle blocker from Marquette, was selected by the Grand Rapids Rise with the 25th pick. 26th pick went to the San Diego Mojo. They selected Aaliyah Rubin, outside hitter from Stanford. 27th pick was Avery Tatum, opposite from Indiana. That was selected by the Columbus Fury. Number 28 was Taylor Landfair, outside hitter from Nebraska. They actually got that pick courtesy of the Dallas Pulse. The Ignite selected that pick with the 28th pick. The number 29th pick was the Omaha Supernovas. They selected Allie Check, opposite from Nebraska / Baylor. So she'll be staying in Nebraska. Number 30 was Atlanta Vibe, who selected middle blocker from Texas A&M, Ithena Kos Akpala. Number 31 was the Orlando Valkyries, who selected outside hitter from UCLA, Sheridan Leverett. And then closing off the draft, the number 32 overall pick from the Indy Ignite was Imani Bush, outside hitter from Oklahoma. So there you have it right there. I'm not going to really go into my overall thoughts, but Atlanta, every team had a good draft. When it comes to the MLV draft, there's no such thing as a bad draft. Unless you drafted a player that is not committed to playing pro volleyball. But Dallas Pulse will be an interesting team, especially since they're a new team. I want to see what the Orlando Valkyries will do to try to repeat as champs. I want to see what the Indy Ignite can do. I want to see what the Omaha Supernovas can do. I think the Supernovas will be an interesting team just because everyone loves those Supernovas, and they're pretty much sell out most of their crowds for the most part. So overall, that's pretty much what I think my true winner of the draft might have been the Atlanta Vibe. They obviously got better. I can't imagine this team going backwards. My only big question for the MLV is, will the number 1 overall seed win the whole thing? Will the number 1 overall seed get out of the quarterfinal round? Because the past 2 seasons have seen the number 1 overall seed of the MLV/PVF playoffs basically not make it out of the semifinal round. And then another question is that will we get an expansion for the playoffs? Because we have 9. Well, we currently have 8 teams. We currently have 8 teams: Atlanta, Columbus, Dallas, Omaha, Indy, Grand Rapids, Orlando, and San Diego. There will be a team from Minnesota in 2027, but same with LOVB or League One Volleyball. But will all 8 teams make the MLV playoffs? Will it still only be 4 teams? Will 6 teams make the playoffs with a play-in round and then eventually a semifinal round? Like, those are the million-dollar questions that I'm willing to ask if I were in an MLV Q&A. But I digress. The MLV isn't going to be starting until January of this upcoming year. So a lot of things happening in January, and a lot of things happened the past few weeks. We had a lot of NCAA women's volleyball. We had this NCAA men's volleyball news being broken today. So a lot happened. I know it seemed like a lot, but we're closing in on the end of 2025, which that's another thing. How are we in December already? And that's kind of why I titled it, How Are We in December Already? It feels like 2025 just started yesterday. But overall, I think I think the last month of volleyball is going to be fun, especially on the NCAA women's side. I just hope NCAA men's volleyball finally gets the love that it truly deserves. But that's going to basically do it for this week's episode of Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. I'll be back next week with some more volleyball action and probably a recap of the Los Angeles quadrant of the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament. But until then, this is Teran Rodriguez of iSports Radio signing off. Have yourself a great week. Enjoy all the volleyball action. Make sure you fill out all your NCAA women's volleyball brackets. Join a bracket group on ESPN. Doesn't matter who, just join. Get involved. Help grow the game of volleyball all around, especially in NCAA men's volleyball. But I will see you next week, and I will see you on Thursday for some BYU Cal Poly action at the Galen Center. Peace and blessings, everybody.